I'm Sanjana and I'll be explaining the topic good documentation practices. And in this topic, we'll be seeing about what is GDP, that is the introduction, and then features of GDP and the principles of GDP and what and all should be done and not done in the while preparing the GDP and the process flow, benefits of GDP, and it is a Q7 documentation record 6 and what it tells about the documentation process. So, what is good documentation practice? So, this good documentation practice are said to be the guidelines where for document management and control, which is designed to help companies which can regulate industries meet required quality standards. So, it is said to be mainly like is a set of internationally accepted guidelines that ensure the reliability, integrity, and veracity of data collected. That is, variety of data collected during the research, development, manufacturing, and testing of drugs and many other medical devices. So, what are said to be the features of GDP? Like features of GDP is nothing but which includes like some of the principles in it, like the accuracy, concisement, legibility, traceability, contemporaneous, and then enduring, and then accessible, and like accurate. And these are all which will be included in the features of the GDP. So now we'll be discussing about the principles of good documentation practices. Mainly there are said to be 16 principles involved, and the first one is said to be the accuracy. Every piece of information recorded should be correct and precise. And the second one is that the clarity and the completeness, that is the documentation should be clear, understandable and complete. Like we should use plain languages, provide context and then include all relevant details. And the third one is that the timeliness, where the documentation should be recorded without delays and kept up to date. Finally, like untimely records can block other tasks and like feed decision makers with outdated information, so which is said to be decreasing the performance of specific company employees and the whole company. And then next is the traceability and audit trials. So where we maintain document traceability by recording all the changes to your documents within a full life cycle. So to ensure this is possible, your technical writer should structure content to make information traceable. And next is the consistency and the standardization, where we establish and use consistent formats, templates, and terminology across documentation whenever possible. And sixth one is that the legibility. Carefully choose, we should care like while writing or while documenting, we should carefully choose the fonts and their sizes and then leadings and the contrast ratios and all related to the format of the text, and then how the word should be, and everything should be properly seen. Next is the authorization, approval, and accountability, where only authorized individuals should approve documents and be accountable for the accuracy of generating and sorting documentation. And next is the version control and change management, is where by keeping your document up to date and maintaining a history of all the changes, you can implement efficient version control. Like you should be up to date. And then next is protection, security, and restricted access, where the documentation like documents containing sensitive information which should be reliably protected from unauthorized access, alteration and destruction, and should be properly secured. And next is like the retention and the destruction, or like we should hold your documents only for the required period and destroy them securely when no longer needed, because keeping it may sometimes lead to any unethical activities or something. And training and awareness is train your relevant personnel on practices of good documentation and ensure they're aware of why compliance is important. And 12th one is validation. Validate any systems your company uses for generating or storing documentation for data integrity, because it is very important to use a updated system. And then review cycles is regularly review your documents to spot and correct errors, verify the relevance and ensure compliance. And next is risk-based approach is prioritize your good documentation practices based on risk to focus your resources where they can make the most impact. And next is the root cause analysis. By conducting a root cause analysis, you can address the underlying causes of documentation problems rather than just treating the symptoms. And next is the continuous improvement, the last one. That is the continuous improvement. Identify and you should implement improvements to your documentation process over time to maintain ongoing compliances. So these are said to be the 16 principles of GDP. Now let's see what are the do's and don'ts while going for the good documentation practices. So first of all, it should be always record entries at the time they occur. Don't pre or post date the documents. Next is like always record entries with the date and your signature or initials. And always use indelible ink, not pencil or water soluble ink while you're writing the documents. And then never sign for someone else, only sign for work that you've performed or annotate if different, because that will become a problem in the future. And then never use whiteout to correct entries, like using some whitener or something else to correct your entries will be a major issue. And then never backdate like the good manufacturing practices records. Never discard original raw data or GMP records if still in their retention period. Only record on control documents. Be consistent in wording whenever possible, and never obliterate an entry for scribbling over it to render it unreadable. Like and don't delay the data recording. Like don't dispose of document unless explicitly told to do so. Like until the time is there, keep the record and then you have to dispose it. And don't keep the do keep the original data, and then do add notes to provide context. So next we'll be seeing about the process flow of the good documentation practices. So this good documentation practice is said to be having like different steps in it. Like the first one is the preparation, where we initiate the new documents that is required, and the next is like the reviewing the draft document, and then correction, if any correction is there then we'll be correcting it, and then approving the document, and then we go for publishing the new document, and then if any change in the document again you will be going for it, and then we are issuing the documents. At last we are issuing the documents, and then um, checking it once again, and then recording it, and then storing the document and archiving the documents. So these are done for nothing but goal of like delivering drugs and medical devices that are safe and effective. Because if any of these steps is said to be wrong, or if you have done any mistake in the documentation, it will be questioned by the investigator when they see the documents. So it is very important to document each and everything that we are doing, and should be properly followed. And next is said to be the benefits of the good documentation practices. So the benefits is said to be like it leads to a smoother running operation. Having complete information and knowing how to properly deal with the issues, it will be easy when you do the good documentation practices. And it reduces documentation errors by having the mechanism to properly record data and correct errors. And it is also very helpful in maintaining a level of consistency across an organization in how things are documented and recorded, so that it will be easy to improve something, or if any mistake is done it can be corrected easily. And it ensures that documentation is clear, concise and comprehensible. And it ensures traceability and authentication, or authenticity is said to be very important in this, because originality in the documentation, like what you are done, it should be it is said to be put in the document precisely, so that it is very easy for us to improve the data that we want it, or improve the organization. And specific clear instructions to the staff can be given through this documentation, so it is easy for them to go through the documentation and improve the organization. And the last topic that we'll be seeing is the Q7 documentation and records, where it is nothing but the guideline that comes under ICH book chapter 6, which talks about the documentation, records and integrity, where it contains like five different divisions in it. The first is the documentation systems and specifications, where it talks about like the all documents, how it should be prepared, reviewed and approved and distributed, and the issuance and the revision of it. And then next is the equipment cleaning and use record, which talks about like the equipment use, cleaning, sanitation and the sterilization methods, and then maintenance, how it should be done, the date and time, how it should be appropriately recorded, and the person who performed it, and the cleaning and the maintenance should be all coming under the record. And then the next is the records of raw materials, intermediates, API labeling and packaging materials, where it talks about the manufacturer name and then identity and quantity of each shipment of each batch of raw materials, like the labeling and the packaging materials should all be recorded. And then we have the batch production and control records, which talks about like the actual results recorded for critical process parameters, time, quantity measured, and then equipment use sample, and then actual yield at appropriated phases or times and everything. And next is the last one is that laboratory control records, where it talks about like laboratory controls include complete data derived from all tests conducted to ensure compliances, and statement or references to each test methods used. So with this, the topics get concluded, and thank you.